On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the world watched in disbelief as the unthinkable unfolded before our eyes. The skyline of New York City, a symbol of strength and prosperity, was shattered by the barbaric acts of terrorism. For years to come, the United States and its allies have embarked on a pursuit of justice for these acts. However, it is truly unclear as to whether this pursuit has been purely in the name of justice. These attacks on the World Trade Center in New York and the Pentagon in Virginia not only claimed the lives of thousands, but created a wake that has been and will be felt for many years to come. In this wake, we have seen transformations in how we see security, liberty, and even what it means to be a citizen today. In this, and what can be said to be arguably the most prominent and observable effects of the attack, is the rampant xenophobia that followed.
Xenophobia is defined as the fear and hostility towards people from other countries or cultures. While this phenomena has a long history, it became increasingly prevalent after the September 11th terrorist attacks against the United States. Not only did the events of 9/11 shake our nation to its core, but they also triggered a significant shift in societal attitudes, particularly towards individuals belonging to Muslim or Arab communities. One of the most immediate impacts of 9/11 was the association of the attacks with Islam and Muslims. The perpetrators were identified as Islamic extremists, which led to widespread stereotypes about Muslims as terrorists. This association, fueled by media coverage and political rhetoric, created an atmosphere of suspicion and fear towards those who appeared to be of Muslim or Middle Eastern descent. A surge of hate crimes followed this, as mosques were vandalized, Muslim-owned businesses were attacked, and individuals faced verbal abuse and physical assaults simply because of their appearance or religious affiliations. This climate of fear and hostility was further exacerbated by the government's response to the attacks. Such responses as the enactment of the Patriot Act and the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security led to increased scrutiny of immigrant communities. Racial profiling became more common as scrutinized groups were targeted for additional screenings at airports or subjected to invasive investigations solely based on their ethnicity or religion. Xenophobic narratives were perpetuated and spread vastly through media outlets, often portraying Muslims and Arabs in a negative light and equating Islam with terrorism. This biased representation reinforced existing prejudices and stereotypes, contributing to the normalization of xenophobia within society. The rise of xenophobic sentiment post 9/11 has had broader implications for immigration policies and national security measures. Stricter border control, immigration bans, and discriminatory profiling all became more prevalent and requested as policymakers sought to address perceived threats to national security. Xenophobia's prevalence expanded greatly in the years following 9/11, and the legacy of this period can still be felt today. Debates surrounding issues such as immigration, religious freedoms, and national security are still ensuing and have all been shaped by the events of September 11th.
The shockwaves of xenophobia fired through America, a fear that found expression particularly in our airport security. In the belief that we'd be safer with stricter airport security, we began to crack down on whomever we thought to be suspicious. While the measures were good-hearted in nature, our unjust fear of the Muslim people was seeping through every seam.
Congress and the President faced lots of pressure to make changes to airport security after the September 11th attack. The response to this pressure was the TSA. The TSA was established by the Aviation and Transportation Security Act, passed by the 107th Congress and signed into law by President George W. Bush on November 19, 2001, just over 2 months after the September 11th attack. But what is the TSA? The TSA stands for the Transportation Security Administration. According to their mission statement, their primary purpose is to prevent aircraft hijackings. The TSA does this by performing searches and screenings, which may include physical interactions with passengers, including pat-downs and property searches. The TSA also lifts and carries bags weighing up to 50 pounds for the safety of aircrafts and their passengers. While the role that the TSA fulfills is necessary for the safety of aircraft passengers, There are many people who wish for airport security to be from a non-public organization. This is because numerous studies have found that the TSA has consistently mismanaged security investments and that private screeners perform as good or better than TSA screeners. Privately sourced airport security is also not affected by the politics on Capitol Hill. In 2019, during the government shutdown, many TSA employees, not being paid, stopped showing up to work, which was a great hindrance to airport security. In 2001, the TSA was a reaction to the clear necessity for improved airport security. Now, more than 20 years later, like any other bureaucratic agency, the TSA lacks organizational structure and efficiency. In the future, there is likely to be a shift towards private companies like Clear and Athelion to keep our aircraft safe.
From the fortified airports to the battlefields in the Middle East, these crackdowns were only a small front in the larger campaign of what we call the War on Terror. This global conflict would define America's foreign relations in the 21st century, creating a labyrinth of geopolitical conflict, taking a large part in creating the world as we have it today.
The war in Afghanistan commenced after the 2001 September 11th attacks that destroyed both the World Trade Centers and damaged the Pentagon. The United States learned that the al-Qaeda leader, Osama bin Laden, was hiding in the Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, and when the Taliban refused to cooperate, the U.S. led an international coalition into the heart of Afghanistan. The invasion marked the beginning of a 20-year campaign that claimed the lives of 176,000 people. 46,319 civilians, 69,095 military personnel, and 52,893 opposition fighters were killed. It was a major turning point in the military tactics of terrorist campaigns and led to an international reform of human rights and policies when under invasion. War strategies against terrorism changed greatly during the so-called War on Terror. U.S. troops were forced to learn to engage in intense and fleeting fights with disorganized combatants and to form small and precise task force to take out targets. This was because instead of conventional warfare, enemy militants would hide themselves in houses with women and children and fire under the cover of large crowds. After firing, they would run to another house or street and reopen fire. U.S. forces would either have to choose not to engage or to be strategically careful in who they shot. Furthermore, enemies would set traps, using IEDs and mines that were flagrant violations of international war law. In response, U.S. troops and their counterparts began to use more indiscriminate methods of shooting, injuring many civilians. However, the U.S. military began to resort to using drones and airstrikes to take out enemy positions despite the hefty civilian casualties associated with them. To kill Osama bin Laden, SEAL Team 6 used a very small task force that was inserted into his village, ushering in a new type of precision-based targeted killing. However, along with these innovative military tactics came flagrant human rights violations. Hundreds of civilians were killed by drones under U.S. interrogation and by crossfire. Therefore, while the war strategies themselves changed, human rights violations increased, leading to international legislation to limit them.
As has been seen throughout the past 2 decades, the aftermath of the attacks of 9/11 have been many, going far past the domestic threat in the United States. Whether it be the rampant xenophobia that still exists today, airport security that has only become stricter, and an endless war on terror, these attacks have moved the entire world into a new era, leading one to realize that September 11th, 2001 was only the beginning of the world as we know it.
For the families who mourn, this nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can